You ask what time?
Totally.
Chairman of our committee is temporarily out of the room, and he'll be back in 1 second.
I'll run it while he's gone.
Yeah. So we'll just have to throw it neutral until Joey gets back.
Where did he go?
Mr. Chairman, while he's out, just to go back to what Chris presented earlier, we've got a lot of great individual athletes this year too, that you didn't recognize the individuals, but we've got a couple
filling
of
in.
track All-Americans.
Yep.
A golfer who made it to the NCAA tournament, a tennis player made it to the NCAA tournament. So we've got a lot of great individual athletes. We had the professional and the amateur female athletes of the year. So we've been well represented on the individual level too, just FYI.
Well, a scholarship invested there yields a higher yield than any other scholarship, especially in baseball, because you have partial scholarships and all of them graduate. I'm exaggerating when I say all of them, but
95%.
plus.
Yeah.
And nobody has a full scholarship, or seldom. So that's a kind of a fun investment there. Mr. Chairman?
All right. I'll now call the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. And thank you all for being here. We will begin by calling the roll. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind.
Trustee Baker.
Here.
Trustee Boyd.
Here.
Trustee DeLay.
Here.
Vice Chairman Freeman.
Here.
Committee Chair Jacobs.
Here.
Trustee Martin.
Here.
Chairman Smith.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
We've got a quorum.
Okay. The green section is the Finance and Personnel Committee section, and under tab 1, we have the minutes from the last meeting on March the 16th. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Who made the motion in the second?
Trustee Freeman made the motion. Trustee DeLay made the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Tab 2, we have a special presentation. Alan, do you want to take care of this?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Jacobs and Chairman Smith. On this section, we had in here, since it was so intertwined with the section in the academic committee, it was presented at the same time. So that information has already been presented at the same time the academic committee presentation was done. It was regarding the non-returning students, and the section that specifically Dr. Schluter went into was the graph with the retention, and then we went into having the 800 additional students and what that cost was and how much revenue impact that had. So that section had already been covered in that section, unless there's any other questions.
We would entertain any other questions or comments.
Left field question.
Okay?
Students not returning, financial impact, debt. What does this university write off in non-payments from students each year?
I would have to look.
Approximately. I mean, just,
It's about $1 million, I'm thinking.
it's about $1 million.
Yes.
So, okay.
You know, and that, you know, will vary from one year to the next, because we are still doing collection efforts during that time. So that's based on an average of how old debt is, and it's amortized over a number of years.
How far we go? 2 years to then write off 3 years? 2 years?
I believe it's, I believe we start looking at them, our calculation starts looking at them at probably 6 months.
Okay.
But then it goes through probably about a 3-year cycle.
Does it?
And it's a different percentage, you know, at a smaller percentage 6 months out, but if it's 3 years out, it's a much bigger percentage. And that's what that calculation's based on.
So I'm not familiar with the process. So what happens when a payment is delinquent? Is that something that we pursue as a university? I mean, it's very harsh, I understand that, because these students probably can't afford it. But is there a collection agency that gets engaged, or how does that
Yes.
work?
We have a process in our bursar's office that they make those initial contacts, and that's quite frequent. There's a lot of that's, with phone calls and personal contact. And then there's a process where we do letters, trying to get payment during that time. And that goes on for probably about 6 months. And then that's when we do have 2 collection agencies that we turn it over to, and then they try to make that collection.
What's our policy on withholding diploma?
Yes, we withhold, if they do have a balance greater than, I think it's $200, we hold those until they can
Gotcha.
pay those
Okay.
balances.
Also transcripts.
Transcripts,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And JD, I shared the story last time I was here. There was a young lady working at McDonald's. I came to one meeting. I came early, and she had dropped out of MTSU, and she had a $500 balance, and it prevented her from doing anything. She couldn't get back in school without it. She couldn't get her transcripts to go somewhere else without it. So, while we must have rules, but that's a bit tough. And fortunately, I was able to get with Kim and pay her balance. But so yeah, we do have some pretty strict rules around that, and I certainly understand it. But there's also there's another side to that.
Yeah. Well, to your point, there's another individual in this room that I won't call out that has done that for several people.
Yeah. So.
So salute to everybody. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, JB.
Sir.
Thank you. Next is tab 3, and Dr. McPhee has an announcement and an action for this committee to take so that it'll be at the next board meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just some brief remarks. I am recommending to this committee to appoint our legal counsel and secretary of the board. As you all know, Heidi Zimmerman retired. We conducted a national search, and in fact, Alan Thomas chaired that group. We had faculty and staff, a good representation of the university that served on that committee. We had a number of applications. The committee narrowed it down to 4 finalists. They all were exceptional. However, based on our interview and feedback that I've received, I'm recommending that James Floyd be appointed as our general counsel and secretary of the board. You have his resume. I think we sent that out even earlier. You can see he comes highly qualified. In fact, he has served as general counsel at this university prior to going to Vanderbilt. He's been a general counsel in the governor's office, the attorney general's office, et cetera, et cetera. So my recommendation is that we appoint him as general counsel and secretary of the board.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just a curiosity question, Joey. Obviously well qualified. Why did he decide to return after having the same role previously, Dr. McPhee?
Yes, the question was asked in all of the interviews. He's senior associate general counsel at Vanderbilt. And he feels that this position, which includes secretary of the board, is, I wouldn't say a promotion, but an opportunity for him to move up. Most importantly, he said he missed MTSU.
Most importantly, what, Doc?
He missed this university, he missed MTSU.
Oh.
He loved the community.
Missed you, didn't he?
No, sure. But it was, for him, he see it as a step up with the additional responsibilities.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, Dr. McPhee.
Okay.
Bill, are you in the house? Is it Bill going to take care of this? There's Bill.
Good morning. I have two items to present. The first item, located on tab 4, page 23 of your materials, is an informational item regarding the FY 22-23 capital outlay budget request. As part of your materials, there are enclosed the instructions. Of course, there's a lot of information about scoring criteria on the capital outlay. There's capital maintenance instructions as well in there. The big change this year, and that's on the top of page 27 of your materials, is THEC has limited our project requests to renovation projects only. So typically, we have a new building. This year, it's quite a change to restrict those and to limit it to renovation projects only. The purpose of that was indicated as a way to address growing levels of deferred maintenance across higher learning institutions across the state. MTSU has examined several possible projects for renovation and is currently focused on a ground-up renovation of the historic Kirksey Old Main building, including the demolition of the Midget building, which is on the kind of attached onto the building as well. And this will restore, the hope is to restore the architectural character of KOM and bring it back to its former glory. We will certainly further define the scope of this project, of the capital outlay request, and bring this item to the MTSU board for approval during the August 24 Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. The outlay request is due to THEC on Wednesday, September 15 of 2021.
Bill, how old is Old Main? How old is the building?
It was constructed in 1914, I believe, so it's got a few years of age on it. So,
When do you tear them down?
Fully depreciated at least.
Yeah, we've got the use out of it. So 1914.
yes, sir.
Is it the oldest building on campus?
It's one of the original buildings on campus. I'm not sure if it was, there were several built during that time. I don't know if that was finished first, but I think it was in certainly the first grouping of structures on campus.
I think it was one of the first four, including the president residence that leaks like a. I called Alan a couple of weeks ago, and the whole kitchen was just flooding at night. But it was the president's residence, Old Main, Rutledge, and the hall.
Jackson Building.
Yes.
So the resident has issue?
Sir?
Well,
I'm not even going to make a comment.
hey, we can remedy that, can't we? Downside,
I'm-
1,500 square feet.
I'm not going to.
Whatever.
I'm not going to speak ill of the president's residence.
I mean, except I wish it wouldn't leak.
I must give credit, though, on a serious note, to our facilities folks. They really have done a really great job keeping the building usable.
Well, we built you a nice entrance.
Do we need a motion?
On this, no.
No.
No motion. This is all information. Does that mean you're wanting to move on?
Oh, no, I didn't think about that.
All right, Bill.
Yes, sir. The second item, and this is located in tab 5 or page 47 of your meeting materials. This is an action item for capital disclosures. On page 53, there are two project disclosures listed for board approval. The first is College Heights renovation project. This was a minor upgrade to the College Heights building to accommodate a training simulator and provide office space for emergency management personnel. This project was disclosed to THEC on May 14th via the quarterly disclosure process for projects under $500,000 in total project costs. The second disclosure indicated on page 57 is for the Campus Quadrangle Improvements Project, and this is slated to be included in the FY 22-23 capital budget disclosure. This project is currently on the MTSU capital disclosure list, but will expire on July 1, 2022. This disclosure will keep this project on our disclosed list and give MTSU the ability to move forward with this work if funding allows.
So we need a motion to move these forward, right?
Sir.
So moved. I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Which quadrangle buildings are you referring to? The buildings around this quadrangle?
It will be the kind of the science, I've heard it referred to as a science quadrangle. So not the historic quadrangle, but
Right,
the one with KUC and the science building, the library.
So it's a sort of moving that one that's by the business building, extending it a little bit more.
Well, and there were a few issues. I know we had a photography building on that
Yes,
quadrangle that
yes.
that we demolished years ago, and we have a pedestrian, a sidewalk network that doesn't really reflect the current building planning. So that was certainly something to be addressed,
Great.
along with other things.
Yeah, I was just trying to position it in my head, in my map. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you.
Hey, boy, before you go, careful. In our survey on campus, how critical is parking?
Parking is always a very big issue.
How critical is parking perceived by students? That's a direct question. Do we know?
I think it would be a big priority,
Right.
certainly if we polled the students.
What is the master plan under your property acquisition in buildings to go forward for parking?
We are currently looking at adding a parking deck. We have disclosed a parking deck.
All right.
So we're trying to look at a few scenarios right now and plan for that, but certainly the emphasis right now is on the East Quad, the kind of the south end of campus that has a deficiency of parking spaces. So we're really looking, kind of honing in on that area. We have a few concepts right now, and I don't know that we have a timeline on that work, but we're certainly looking into it.
I hope you move it up, because there's a lot of criticism on our campus parking coming from our customers, that'd be the students. And then in November, you updated us and gave us property acquired, a list, and you also approved acquisition. Could you update these two, please?
Yes, sir.
Please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Baker, on the parking, I will promise you that I've heard that parking was a problem in 1911. On a serious note, and we are very much aware and conscious of that issue, I don't think we'll ever have our students satisfied about parking. And one of the issues is that they want to come 5 minutes before classes begin, pull up next to the building, and so I don't want to give the sense that somehow we can fully address this, but we are aware of it, and that's part of our plan to continue to increase parking.
But to tell your customer, here is the plan, we don't have that statement, here is the plan. That's my point of order.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Good. Joe?
Yes, sir. Well, it's good to be with you today. The next item on the agenda is the capital maintenance project submittal portion, tab 6 in your materials, again on page 51. What we have for you today is the three different things. One is we'll provide the pool allocation as we submit our FY 22-23 capital maintenance plans for THEC. We'll provide the pool allocation, which is the genesis or the basis for the funding that we put together our project request to follow. We'll also provide the list of projects both for this fiscal year and 4 out years to give you the idea about the planning associated with that, as well as the individual project request for the projects for 22-23. The maintenance pool and allocations for 22-23, we've discussed this before. It's a very similar process that we've used, whereby the THEC has a formula. It's based on what they call the Sherman-Durgis formula that allocates funding, or it seeks to allocate funding based on factors like age of buildings, capital and current replacement value of buildings, and so forth. And so they do that for the entire body of institutions in higher education. Our portion of that, when you do the math, our portion of that is 6.7% of the state allocation or the state pool. So as they pursue funding at various levels, and this year they gave us 2 levels to consider. One is $175 million for all of higher ed in the state. Our portion of that would be $11,798,000. The lower level to consider, kind of the base, is $35 million for all of higher ed, and our portion would be $2,360,000. So on page 53, you have that allocation, and that's the basic formula, but there's two numbers that we have to prepare for. I've also included, I like to include on this sheet for at the very bottom, just a brief history of the number of projects and the funding that we've received over the years. That way you have a little context for how this typically works out for the university. On page 50, turn this around here. On page 55, we have the list of projects for FY 22-23. You can see those. I'm happy to state those or walk through those. I think just a couple of notes as you look at those. The first two projects combined, priorities 1 and 2, which is the multi-building elevator modernization, phase 3, and the campus-wide lighting and lighting control updates. Those two projects combined for that $2,360,000 mark, so that if that were to become the funding, then that's the line where that line is drawn for the university. So those are our top two projects that would meet that. And then, of course, every other project summarily adds up to the $11,798,000. Typically, we would get somewhere between those two. We're very fortunate. In July, we expect to receive the full complement of projects from last year, which was over $9 million. So, which was a tremendous year for us to get that type of that number of projects and the way we're able to invest in those older buildings. So, this is the current list. And you can see, you'll see some things. Mr. Waits, showed you the instructions that were in the packet that talks about the different buildings. But you'll see the way I put this together. You'll see campus-wide and multi-buildings. We really want to try to impact the campus as much as we can. We try not to just focus everything in one spot if we can afford to do that. So, and then of course we have the remaining projects. Let me pause right there and ask if there's any questions. Or any direction anything you'd like me to speak to directly in the materials. Okay.
Joe, these are all hard physical components. What about landscape and aesthetics, environment? I don't see very little as related to that.
Yes, sir. Oftentimes landscaping is a lower priority from a capital maintenance, because when we talk about deferred maintenance and we talk about the age of a building and so forth, as we get into the major systems in a building, the HVAC systems, things that have useful lives of about 25 to 30 years, and roof systems and things like that, most of the capital maintenance is driven toward those systems. Now, that said, we have a very comprehensive approach, I will say, to dealing with landscaping on campus. We, particularly when we do projects, oftentimes when we do new projects or renovation projects, the landscaping becomes part of that. I mean, I think the new academic building is a great example of that, a major portion of that, and you look around that building, the landscaping is done in that manner. So that's really where we try to do the big changeover of things, and then of course we maintain and we do a lot of projects, including a lot of green projects on campus. There's some local funds on campus where a lot of landscaping gets some attention through those projects, and we do smaller efforts in that arena, I would say.
When a student comes to a campus, you sure softens concrete. Greenery does.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I am happy to report that I've been here 22 years, and the campus has transformed tremendously from a green perspective in dealing with a lot of the students when it comes to sustainability and green, and find that right balance between functionality. And of course, one of the things you'll see here is that we have a sidewalk project. It's the last one for the 22-23, and that would encompass a lot of that should we get to that project this year, if we get that far down the list, which we hope to do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Really kind of a comment to Dr. McPhee and Steve. Alan and I talked a little bit about this earlier, emailed each other. We look like we're kind of in the middle of the pack of this funding if you look at the dollars. But one thing from what Alan tells me is the number of students is really not taking part of this formula, and the more people you have in buildings, the more people you have on campus, the greater the wear and tear. So if you add students, if you do it as a ratio of students, and we're about we're getting about 2/3 of our funding proportionately to the students. We're really at the bottom of the pack. in terms of capital maintenance dollars, if you look at it in those terms. Now, that's not the only way to look at it. I'm not saying it's not the one and only, but it is something that we need to, I think, bring to the attention to TEC, that we're in effect being, as part of this, being maybe underfunded. And again, that's, I think students, and probably we've got a greater number of employees, add those to it, we got more wear and tear, and we're not really getting compensated as such for maintenance in that because of this formula. And I don't know what all's in the formula, but Alan told me number of folks is not in the formula. So.
That's correct.
Yes, and you make a very good point, and that is one of many issues with some of the TEC formula that really works against us. But right now, it doesn't
how to raise
count.
that issue to get it to be reviewed, but I think we need to consider, and we need to do a little bit more historical research. We're looking at 1 year. Could be different if we looked at multiple years. I don't know. We didn't look at that, didn't have time to look at that, but we need to do some examination of this and go back to them.
This year, they redo, this is a normal year that they redo the funding, right?
The formula.
Funding formula.
That's really kind of what I meant. Is this part of the formula funding? Well, if we have a wish list, this is our year to write the formula. And what I'm trying to say is, if there's a formula, I know this isn't formula, but while I'm on the subject, if we're on the low end of that, my suggestion is that we have an answer. We don't just say we're being taken advantage of. We need to say, here's where it should be. We've got lobbyists, and we've got all kind of other ways to influence that. And on this particular number, I think Tom points out, I don't know how it's derived, I don't know how the state gets to that number, but if you need to change how the state gets to that number so that it more fairly reflects, I mean, like I say, we've got lobbyists and we've got all kind of other lobbying efforts that we could utilize, different than just waiting in line, we're down here.
Mr. Chairman, I think the point that Trustee Boyd made really is the answer. We are aware of that, the matter of how we get the state, to make that change, and very similar issues to what we're going through with the formula. It is advantage to certain institutions, and during those discussions, they certainly don't want to change, but we can visit with that. Alan, can see where we're
Mr. President, I'll avail myself to any efforts in that regard in working with the state or working with THEC. Have established a great relationship with them. So if there's some unfairness that's impacting MTSU, again, I make myself available to meet with them at any time, since
appreciate that.
I am retired.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good discussion. Anything else?
Would it be appropriate for me to make just a comment about what's been said? Two things about that. One is the formula now is, again, it is not driven at all by the FTE count or the population count, as you well noted. And so I do know the formula and can certainly assist and get that information to you about, but it is primarily based on age of buildings. And very interesting as we discussed KOM and the age of that building and the president's residence, the age of that building. And so you can imagine that that is a big driver in terms of the physical condition. It's a major driver in terms of the physical condition. And so that the entire database is based on square footage, replacement value, and those age. So for instance, our science building, while it contributes a lot to the total replacement value of our asset, we have about $945 million in E&G facilities. That's our number that's in for E&G facilities. The science building is so new, it's not contributing a lot to the maintenance side of the calculation because it's 9 years old as opposed to 50 years old. But when it becomes 50, it will be drawing more toward that into the renewal or the maintenance side. So much of this is driven by the age of the facility. So I just wanted you to be aware that's the physical component.
I'm not saying that FTE is the only aspect of the formula.
Right.
I think it should be an aspect of the formula. I mean, if you're
Right.
looking at Austin P has a relatively new science building, not as new as ours,
Right.
but they've got, what, a half or third or whatever it is of the students. So they're going to have a lot less traffic in it too, so it's going to last longer. So all I'm saying is we need to try to encourage them to look at traffic as well as age.
I totally agree, and I totally understand. The second thing I will offer, that which is brand new, Bill Waits and I are working with THEC today in a new area, which is to tie the physical condition. We also have physical surveys of buildings that rates the condition of your HVAC, that rates the condition of your structural and things like that. So those impacts of the number of times you touch it, the number of times you hit that door, those would be reflected in the rating, so you would expect newer buildings to have higher ratings. But we're working right now with THEC, and we've made what I think is some real tremendous progress in trying to do the evaluation of capital renewal and capital maintenance needs based on condition, not just age. So we're working very closely, and I know you know Patty Miller from her service here, and so and a lot of this originated really in our master plans here on campus, where we did a more in-depth study on deferred maintenance. So I think there is some movement in that area that's coming through building conditions that's more in line of a metric to take advantage or take into account the issues that you raised. So they're very good issues, and I think THEC is recognizing it. We're just trying to bring those things together now. So that's something that you haven't seen, but I'm happy to share with you.
And if I could make one comment, I noticed you said a bunch of HVAC programs are on here, replacement, upgrade, et cetera. Some of the more recent research on COVID is that your ventilation and filtering systems are far more important than have perhaps been paid attention to nationally. So when we're doing HVAC, we might want to make sure we get the latest research on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just another observation, nothing we can do about this, but an observation would be that if another university were to bring a whole new campus online, and some of those buildings be a bit long in the tooth with some deferred maintenance, that could negatively impact us if those buildings slide up to the front of the list.
Well, I think to Tom's point, if there's needs to be some, if number of students needs to be in that, we need to give our board and our lobbyist through Dr. McPhee, because he runs the school, but we need to say that it needs to be a suggestion on how that input is changed, because they're not going to come up with one if we don't give them one. Or if they do, it might not be to our advantage. And Pete's right, Martin is going to shrink the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ready?
Yes.
We need to, if you'll flip back to page 51, the action, we need a motion that will approve the $11,798,000 for the 8 projects for years 22 through 23, and then our 5-year plan also. So I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none.
Motion and the second, please.
Motion.
Motion second, thank you.
Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. So on tab 7, starting on page 73, I only have one more lifeline, so now you get to hear from me for a little bit. So one lifeline in between. So starting on page 73 is our tuition fee and housing rate recommendations. THEC had their meeting last week on Thursday, May the 20th, and they approved a binding range for tuition and mandatory fees of 0 to 2%, which was the same as their recommendation back in November of 2020. So the materials in front of you did not have to be changed by any changes that they made last week. If you look on page 76, you'll see what we usually provide you at this meeting each year. Calculation of revenue that we are getting, and then the expenses that we have in the budget related to the upcoming year, related to salaries, software maintenance agreements, some other additional fixed cost. Next, you will see underneath the state appropriations as passed in the governor's budget. You'll see a small reallocation of existing funding there, and then you'll see an unmet need of right at $3 million, $2,985,000, and that is equivalent to a 1.99% increase in tuition, which will comply with THEC's recommended range. On page 77, to put that to look at our tuition compared to some others, if you'll notice, one thing I wanted to point out on page 77, you'll see that MTSU ranks number 7 in our peer group, meaning that out of 13 peers, we rank number 7, so right in the middle. So there's about 7 institutions above and 6 below. If you look at an institution like University of Tennessee, Knoxville, you'll see they rank number 3. And what that means is they have the 3rd highest within their 13 peers in tuition. So there's only a couple institutions above them that have a higher tuition in their peer group, which is a different peer group than we're in. All institutions have their own peer group. So just kind of wanted to point that out this time. On page 79, one additional item related to graduate tuition. It's a recommended additional 3% increase in graduate tuition. We brought this to the board not last year, but the year before as well. Even with this increase, when you compare to our peers and other institutions, LGIs, we will stay at the same where we rank today with their current tuition, and our calculated 3% additional tuition will still rank the same place. It doesn't mean that we jump from number 4 to the number 1 and have the highest tuition. So that's one thing we look at when we were recommending this increase. The next page I want to bring to your attention is on page 79. Nope, that was the one I just did, sorry. Page 83, you'll see our recommended increases in mandatory fees. As you recall, the THEC ranges apply to both tuition and mandatory fees. So you'll see a small increase here of $9 related to parking, technology access fee, and our health services fee, 2 of those being auxiliary, and then you've got the technology access fee as well. So when you combine all of that information together, you'll see on page 87 is the calculation we have to go by that THEC provides of how we comply and stay within that 0 to 2%. And when you combine the tuition increase plus the mandatory fees, so because all students pay the mandatory fees, thus that's why they're called mandatory. When you look at all that together, it's 1.7. A student will see a 1.78% increase in tuition, which is below the 0 or within the 0 to 2% calculation. So you'll see in the middle, a student taking 15 hours would see between tuition and fees $168 increase in their tuition based on a 15-hour course load. So lastly, on this piece, if you recall, a couple years ago, there was a legislation passed called the Tuition Transparency Act. It requires a 15-day comment period anytime the board is going to consider raising tuition and fees, mandatory fees. We currently have that website up because it's before the board meeting. So we had to go ahead and get the website up. We've got on the website, we put on there pending Finance and Personnel Committee recommendation to the board. But we wanted to make sure we hit that 15 days. And we will compile those comments that we receive, and those will be provided for you probably the day before the June 8th board meeting. So going into the rest of it, if you'll look at starting on page 89, a few non-mandatory fees that you see frequently. One of them related to our aerospace area. As you know, that's one of our premier programs, and one that we do some small increases every year to try to keep up with inflation and other costs related to that. In total, there's 5 different non-mandatory fee requests in that section. Page 95 are our housing rates. This is very similar to what you've seen before. It ranges from 2 to 2.5% increase. I think that's a modest increase compared to probably what some of the surrounding apartment complexes may be doing in the community. So, but this is one that we felt would not put so much on our students that want to live on campus. So that's the recommendation there. So, lastly, on page 100, you will see just a compilation of the different increases I just went through by category, and giving you a total of approximately $5 million that would add to the university's revenue budget. And since that's the last page of that section, I think that's all I have, and be glad to answer any questions any board member has.
Hearing no questions, if you wouldn't mind flipping back to page 74. We will need a motion to approve the 1.99% increase for undergraduate tuition. We need with the same motion, the 3% for the graduate tuition, with a effective rate of 1.78% increase for the students. Plus, we would be approving all the non-mandatory fees and housing rates that Alan reviewed with you over the last few schedules. So that's the motion I need.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Kathy is here in the house. We just raised the money. Now are you going to spend the money?
I am. That's my job. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm ready to spend some money, so get ready. What I am proposing to you this morning is funding that has non-recurring funds that have been passed by the state, appropriated $1.1 million non-recurring for salary increases effective January 1. They've also allocated $4.5 million for recurring funds that would be effective July 1st. What I'm going to do today is do proposals for just the non-recurring. In November, we will bring back, I think August, we'll be bringing back to you our recommendations for spending the recurring money. So what I would like to propose today is a increase for the 1.1 million that's been allocated by the state. What we're proposing is going to cost 1.7 million. So I'm using 600,000. Additional would be a 2% equivalent to 6 months, 2% increase, equivalent to 6 months of their pay, of annual salary increase. I'm sorry. It's a one-time bonus based on their salary. It is a 2% for 6 months or $500. So to say it easier, it's really a 1% or $500, whichever is greater, and it's going to be a one-time payment made in June. That's what our proposal is this morning.
May I just ask a question, just for clarity?
Yes.
So at different times, we have talked about, and our board has said that we want to get our total compensation in line or closer to that of other peer schools. It's my understanding that these non-recurring areas of compensation do not calculate in our comparison with other schools. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we are talking about some non-recurring things. I know the calculation that we use when we talk about other schools doesn't consider that, but as I used to think of when I had employees, that is still part of total compensation. And I think that it needs to be reflected, considered, or explained. It's awful easy to say we're not on par with other peer institutions, but in fact, there are other areas of compensation that just are not counting in that number. I just only want to make that for clarity.
That is correct, because we have a nice benefits package here. And, with retirement, health insurance, and longevity, and those kinds of things, people have a tendency to look over that because they're looking at the greenbacks they're getting in their pocket. So.
Right.
But I would add that what you're talking about is comparing ourselves to other institutions, especially within the state. That's generally done for faculty and staff by state law, I guess, or certainly by tradition, on their annual base salary. This doesn't add to the base.
Right, I got that, but
Yeah.
some of our peers are not in state, and we don't know how their compensation is fully calculated, so.
Well, actually, we kind of do because we go to the Chronicle of Higher Education, and they're requiring all the data to be reported the same way. So, and we're comparing apples to apples, but we don't know what oranges are being added in on the side.
Right, I'm with you totally. I guess my only point there is if we're comparing to a peer institution, they may not be getting additional non-recurring compensation, whereas we are giving additional non-recurring compensation. That's just my only point.
And Alan or Kathy, my memory's not with me right here. When was the last time we had a bonus like this? We never get these.
2019, maybe?
I was thinking that went into base, but I could be wrong.
I did not bring that document with me.
That's okay.
Today. I can let you know that.
Since I've been here, I'm thinking maybe 3 that were not added to base.
I'm sorry, what?
Maybe 3 times we paid one-time bonuses,
Yeah, probably.
about 3 times in 20 years.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a,
We normally don't do bonus. Usually they're across the boards that are applied to the base. So, but we have done those in the past.
yeah.
And I might add, it's really important, particularly the year that we have gone through. Our employees have kept this university operating efficiently, and it's a small amount, basically, to say thank you as we move forward for the bonus. So, and I know you're not questioning
I totally
that.
agree. I was just saying it for point of clarity.
Hey, Dr. McPhee, I did know exactly what you just said. I think the staff, the team here has worked extremely hard during one of the most difficult periods in America's history. And to have them receive a bonus is outstanding. I wish it was more. It's a relatively small amount, but a great gesture, but I do wish it were more. But I applaud the governor in his efforts to make this happen. But it's Well-deserved.
It would be nice if the state would fully fund it.
Yes, that's the other thing.
Yeah, they tell us to do things, but don't fully fund it, so.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, if you'll flip to page 103. We need a motion for what the president is recommending
So
for
moved.
approval.
So
Thank you.
moved.
Second?
Second.
Mr. President, this is it's probably in here somewhere. I don't have the mathematical skills to do the calculation. But if a person on campus was making $100,000, what would this be?
They would get $1,000.
$1,000. Oh, so it's six. It's not the whole year.
Well, I'm sorry, you know, 'cause
500.
they would get $500.
The max you can get is 500.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so,
I don't know. It's been probably 30 years since I gave a bonus test.
well, I'm sorry. It would be 1,000.
Yeah. Wow.
The
Okay.
language gets kind of, so it's going to be, what I will calculate is 2% of their current annual salary, and then I will need to divide that by 12 and multiply it by 6. But mathematically, it really is multiplied by 1.
Okay.
I got a bunch of C's and D's in the math
They will get
area.
$1,000.
Let me just make sure the two paragraphs here that you're wanting us to approve are accurate.
That's correct.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well,
And carrying on with Trustee Freeman's comment, as Dr. McPhee also noted back in March, a lot of the staff and a lot of the faculty put money out of their pockets so that they could work off campus, from home, remote, to upgrade their computers, buy their internet access, whatever they didn't normally do. So this is well-deserved, and it's certainly, we look forward to more.
Okay, good. We've got a motion and a second.
Second.
We have one.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed to giving money? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Tab 9. That's you, Alan. Thank you, Kathy.
This time I am out of lifelines, so. But unfortunately, this is our last section, and appreciate your patience today. At this time of the year, we bring to you two budgets. One for the old year, kind of closes out one last budget as required by the state. We compile that up through April, so by the time we're compiling it, we're estimating about 2 months of what the rest of the year is going to be. And then we bring a July budget, and for that one, we're unfortunately estimating a lot of information because we're not even there yet. We do know appropriations, we don't know enrollment, we don't know returning, all that data. We're tracking it and making a lot of estimations. But going back to the October budget, because when we show you the estimated budget in here, you'll notice there's increases from October to the estimated budget. Most of that is in October, we had received the CARES Act funding, but at that time, we didn't know we could use it for lost revenue. So when we went to single occupancy and housing and, cut our revenue in half, we adjusted those budgets and reduced that. So now that we had the stimulus package that was passed in December, then in the estimated budget, you see those budgets go back up because we can use that stimulus funding to replace lost revenue. So they go back to what should have been there in October, but we didn't have those regulations. U.S. Department of Education had not made those decisions at that time. So that's why you'll see from October to estimated those numbers going up. When you look at estimated compared to July, you'll see some of those numbers go down because July is pretty much a base budget. We know what appropriations are. We know some other information. We say that enrollment will stay steady, so we don't put an enrollment increase or decrease in that budget. We do look at some other factors, and anything we know, we put in there, knowing that in the October budget, we can come back then and put enrollment increases and tuition increases and all that. There is some tuition increase in here, but not the entire 1.78%, because we want to, what the state has said, we want to see some tuition increase in the July budget that you think will be passed, and then whatever is actually passed, and we didn't know that until today, we'll put the rest of that back into the October budget. So that's why you'll see some of those numbers come back down. Once again, it is a base budget, and we don't know carryover from June 30. We haven't closed out the year yet, which is June 30. So you'll see all that in the October budget when we bring that to you. So I'm not going to go through page by page, because that's going to be the answer on many of these increases and decreases. I just kind of wanted to give you a general overview. I will bring your attention maybe to the very last page, which is 118. As with with the July budget, we have to put a schedule in here about projects, and we talked about these a little bit during Mr. Waite's capital disclosure and capital outlay presentations. So you'll see that we have in the July budget, the Student Athlete Performance Center, the new student housing, the parking structure, tennis improvements. We want to make sure those are always there, so when we're ready to go with those projects, we're not trying to submit it and then the state takes a year to approve you to move forward. So all those projects would be able to move forward as funding is available. So that's part of the budget, and under the Focus Act, that schedule is required to be submitted to TBR. That's one of the items that they can review because debt still goes through TBR up through school bond. So with that, that concludes that section. Be glad to answer questions.
For Alan, discussion.
Is there any other additional COVID funds coming down the pipeline that we need to be aware of?
Yes, that's another reason we didn't put, or you'll see July budgets go back down, because at the time we were putting this together, we did not have our award notification on the American Rescue Plan, ARP funds. So we have now received those, and we will put that in the October budget. I did, as Dr. McPhee alluded earlier, there were 3 stimulus packages: the CARES Act, the one that passed in December, and then the ARP. We call them HERF 1, 2, and 3 for easier acronyms. But we did go back and total of all those funding sources. We are at $100.9 million. Now, about 43% of that has to go directly to students, which is 43 million of that. So the other 57 million is used for institutional purposes. As you recall, under the CARES Act, one of the things we funded there was the classroom technology, instructor technology to go remote. And that is still in place and will be something that doesn't go away with the pandemic. I mean, it's something that stays. So then in this latest budget and at year end, the plan is to use it for those lost revenue places. You know, we didn't charge students an online fee this last year. That's, approximately $2.7 million that we didn't charge, that we can use the stimulus funding for.
But that goes under money to us instead of money to students, because basically it was money to the students because we didn't take it from them.
Right. It goes under the institutional piece. The student piece is what is awarded to students in a form of a scholarship or a grant. So that's what, and you can use your institutional portion to do additional awards to students. If you don't need it on the institutional side, you can use it to do, you can't go the other direction.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So maybe when all of this is finalized, we could just have a breakout of what came
Yes.
and where
Yes.
it went.
And I agree, when we did back in March of last year and April, when students were going home and we did some of the housing reimbursement refunds, that came out of institutional as well, even though it was giving relief to the student. So we could categorize that. You can't for the federal government reporting, but we can say on the institutional side, these items also benefited students.
I think it's important to recognize that when we're talking to the students, because that is MTSU taking care of the students.
Right.
That's a good point. Otherwise, everybody thinks we got a $57 million net gain.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll flip to page 105. The motion needed is the one to approve the estimated budget for 2020-21 and the proposed budget for 2021-22, knowing that both of these budgets will be back before the board and this committee when we get final numbers.
So,
Mr. Chairman.
second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that'll be the end of the actions. Before closing, Bill, Joe, Kathy, Alan, I want to thank y'all very much for all y'all's hard work. This report, there's a lot of hours that went into all this activity in these reports, and I very much appreciate that, and very much appreciate y'all's presentation to this committee, and thank you for the great job that you're doing. Mr. President, do you have anything you want to say?
No, sir. Thank you.
This committee has adjourned.
We've been asked for a 10-minute break, and we'll do our last committee at 12:19.